even.
But uh, that, and I believe they can just sense the electromagnetism from anything that's operated like that. And they're not dumb. If they see something strapped to a tree,
Oh yeah.
they're going to know what it is. I think they've seen it long enough that they know what it is. At one point in time, this was just this past spring and summer, I asked their permission to put a camera in the gifting site. Something I've never done before because I've always respected their privacy. And it's funny because when I had my very first gifting site, Shane, that's how we met. He was going out there and he was setting up a trail cam. And I said, why are you setting it up there? And he goes, well, I just thought this, would be a good area to catch, deer going through and everything. And I'm like, well, I kind of have a research site right here. And he goes, wait a minute, you're Edie. And I'm like, and you are? And he said, I'm Shane. He says, I'm with the IBRO. I know Leroy, and I swear I'm a nice guy. And I'm like, all right. So we talked, and he put it far enough away from my gifting site that they would still feel comfortable enough to go in. But it was in direct line that he could see us going in and out every week, changing things out. He could see small animals and creatures going through, but every time my site was hit, he would get these complete whiteout photos.
Like the whole photo would be whited out?
The whole photo would be whited out, just completely, like totally, completely overexposed.
Oh, wow.
And the funny thing is when I asked them this summer to do it, and I even had a nicer trail cam, and I put it up, the same thing happened.
Really?
I got whiteout photos. And
what,
so
what do you think?
basically,
What do you think that is? Why is that being caused?
I think it's just electromagnetic field. I think that they can interfere with it.
Really?
I do. I just had so many weird things happen that I can't explain. That when you're in the middle of the forest and you're out there doing your research, you've got your camera out, I've got my fresh batteries in, and I'm taking pictures of like new tree breaks and new structures they've built. And all of a sudden my camera just boom goes dead. And right after that, I hear a howl and a knock. And I'm like, okay, I won't be taking any more pictures. And I get back to the campground and I go to turn the camera on and it's fine. So there, being out in the middle of the forest, there's no radio waves. There's nothing out there. You can barely get a cell signal. There's nothing, no electrical lines or anything that could have interfered, that could have zapped my camera like that. And that happens to us time and time again.
That's wild. I'm part of a ghost hunting group, and that is something that always happens to us. When we're ghost hunting, batteries being drained and stuff like that.
And that's where we started.
Yeah.
We had a paranormal group.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was just our family, because our daughter, well, she was younger at the time. She's almost 20 now, is a medium.
Oh, wow.
She's very gifted. She's been seeing the dead since she was a baby, and it was something that really never crossed my husband's mind. He didn't believe in ghosts or anything until his daughter started telling him there were ghosts. And we were actually out there the night we saw the Bigfoot doing research for a book I've been working on for quite a while, about something paranormal that happened to me while we were down there. And so it wasn't really too big of a stretch for us. Well, it was a big stretch. I mean, we're talking 8-9 foot tall, 600, 700 pound flesh and blood creatures as compared to spirits. But you use a lot of the same equipment, and they can interfere with that equipment just like a spirit can.
Really?
Okay. I don't know how.
I think that's very interesting. I've never heard that other than the fact of them being able to see the infrared light. That's about the only part that I've heard. But for them to be able to manipulate devices that we use for ghost hunting. That's very interesting. Why don't you actually go into for a second, because I want to get back to two things, and I don't want to go down this paranormal tunnel, because I can go for days on that.
We can just schedule another show for that.
Yeah, we can do that. Absolutely. But what type of devices or equipment do you use when you go and you hunt for Bigfoot?
We use digital voice recorders. We always set those on. I keep forgetting the name of it. But basically, what it is, it's a setting that's on there that will pick up sounds in a large area. It's like the setting that you would put on if you were to go to like a symposium or something.
Yeah, like a conference or a speaker.
Yeah,
or something.
That's what it's called. It's called conference mode.
Yeah.
And we put them on that. We learned after our first, big recording that we got that this is what we should set it on. So we use those. We use what they call the bionic ear, which is basically looks like a gun with a satellite dish on the end and headphones, so we could hear further distances. During the night, we use night vision. My husband, I bought him a really cool little toy last Christmas. This is something he'd always wanted, and it's a night vision monocular where he can see 300 feet clearly in pitch black.
Now that is helpful. That's a lot better than your Sony Handycam.
Yeah, it's very helpful. It's very helpful. He even has an infrared torch, which is this big, looks like a cannon.
Yeah.
That he can put out there, and he can take and video with that and catch things, clear as day, 300 feet away. And really the only other things that we use besides that is occasionally I'll put up a trail cam, and we always carry tape measures.
Really? What for?
Footprints.
Okay.
To see how high off the ground certain tree breaks are, to measure tooth marks, because I get a lot of tooth marks in the items that I leave for them. And so if you're going to go out on an expedition, never, ever, ever go without a tape measure. We also use headlamps because those are easier. And we found a little something that we use that a lot of the Bigfooters here have picked up from the paranormal world. I don't know if you've ever used a laser grid before.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Well, we were playing with the laser grid by the fire one night. And he was taking, and just putting, one beam, and he was like making a circular motion, making like little circles going through the forest, and then he would shine them up in the trees that it looked like there were fireflies. And he played with it for a good 20, 30 minutes and then shut it off. And we hear a young Bigfoot scream from behind the tent at us 3 times because it was pissed that we stopped.
It just wanted to watch it, huh?
He wanted to watch it. So we use that on a regular basis. And we've gotten quirky. We've used some crazy things to get them to react. And I don't believe any of this would be possible had it not been for the way that I research. Because people don't get the kind of reactions that we get.
And that's the reason that I wanted to have you on, because of what I've heard from, different interviews that you've done and things, is your style is completely different from anything that I've ever heard out there. Now, I want to get into that, but I want to go back to 2 things before we get too far off topic. Now, you mentioned when you got that recording, when your husband forgot the recorders in the woods and he had to go back.
Yes.
You mentioned in that recording that it sounded like Native American language. Do you think that this Bigfoot maybe is, I don't know how long the Bigfoot story goes back, but do you think that maybe they actually worked with the Indians or learned from the Indians of some sort?
Some tribes saw them as monsters.
Okay.
Some tribes tribes actually called them, they called them Big Brother. They called him the brother of God, so he was Big Brother. And he was what they would consider the god over the creatures in the forest. And, there are many, many tribes who hold the Sasquatch at a very, very high level as not being a horrible being. And one of the folklore that I read from one of the tribes says that Bigfoot usually appears when a tribe is in trouble or having a hardship. And so they always knew that if they were to see a Bigfoot, that they knew things were going to be okay. And I thought that was really interesting because while we were out there camping and everything in the night, we saw the Bigfoot. We were trying to put together a failing marriage. And so that one really kind of rang true to me as far as one of the Native American, one of the folklore tales that we've heard. And because we have, been working together on this, and it has really brought us closer.
Really? Wow. Now, as far as going back to this this Bigfoot language, have you guys? I mean, I don't know how many recordings you guys have, but have you or anyone been able to decode any of it at all to try to understand maybe what some of these some of the words that they're saying mean?
Yeah. Well, I know that the linguist that I sent it to has been doing it. He was doing it in the military. And he said that he couldn't make out a lot of the language that he was speaking. He said, but there was a word toward the end that he recognized that they say a lot, and it is their name for human.
Oh, really?
And he said that by the way, the tone of his voice, it sounded like he had been there watching us for quite a while, and that it was basically a yearning type thing that he didn't want us to go. And so, that was, all I needed, because I think it was at that point in time that I realized that I did have that trust and that I did have that connection with them. That's what made me realize. And it seemed like after that, with the gifting, with my research site, it just got better from there.
That's absolutely amazing. That is wild. See, it's the kind of stuff that I've never heard. You know what I mean? Like, again, it always goes back to these are these horrible beasts, blah, blah, blah. Now, one thing, I want to do one more thing, and then we're going to get into gifting, because we've mentioned a lot about that, and I don't necessarily know that all of the people listening understand that. But let's go back to the animals of the forest. Do you believe, I mean, with Bigfoot being seen as a god by Indians almost, do you believe that they kind of lead the animal kingdom there in the forest, and do they work together, or are they seen by other animals as this horrible beast that's going to eat me?
They are the apex predator. We do know that they kill and eat deer. They go after large prey. I'm not sure if they eat smaller animals, but I have a most interesting recording, and I had asked them permission to leave a recorder, and I wrapped it in plastic so it would stay safe from the weather, and I tucked it into the bottom of a tree, and I showed them, this is where it is. If you don't want it on, you guys already know how to turn them off because you've turned them off before. You can turn it off. But if you don't want to, if you're okay with it, you can let it run. They let it run for 26 hours.
Really?
And then they shut it off.
And you can actually hear them picking it up and shutting it off?
Yes.
And then they just put it back in there without destroying it?
Yep, they did, because I asked their permission. But the cool thing was, and it took me a while to go over everything. And you can hear them different times during the day, in the evening. But the fun thing is that you could hear them come walking through the forest, go into the gifting site, and I could hear the container being opened and the stuff being moved around.